Hi, Spencer. Thanks so much for making the time today.
Hi, no problem at all.
It's a pleasure to talk to you about all that's happening at NEOM. Before we start, I'd like to get your take on the benefits of virtual cards. I know you brought your virtual card to the US. It was announced last December. And in your view, what are some of the benefits this card offers travel-related businesses versus other forms of B2B payment methods?
Okay, well, yes, we're delighted to be expanding our proposition here at NEOM to include the United States. We already have a very strong global proposition out of our core of Europe. We serve customers all over the world. And we're able to do that because virtual cards are able to serve the travel industry because of the established network that the schemes provide. When you think about it and step back for a second, travel is unique in many ways in that you have individuals trading with each other. Hotel in a remote part of Canada selling a product to somebody in Manchester that they've never met before. The schemes provide, when I talk about schemes, I mean Visa and MasterCard and UATP and Diners and others, Discover, but they operate on a system of trust. The hotel in Canada can be assured that whether or not the individual coming from Manchester to stay over at their property, they will get paid, or if something doesn't go as it planned, they'll get refunded, etc. So that trust, that network, that acceptance, build upon that, the technology inherent in virtual cards, the ability to issue a number for a specific transaction, then to program that number so it can only be used on a certain day, in a certain currency, for a certain frequency, for a certain amount. And you've got a very controllable, secure, universally accepted way of paying people around the world, something which the travel industry has been pioneering for years and years and years. And so it really is a duck to water in terms of the match of the needs of the industry versus what a VCC offering can bring.
And it's not just travel companies, right? The travelers get to benefit as well.
Yeah, the travelers get to benefit for all the same reasons that the travel companies get to benefit. Universal acceptance, flexibility, the ability to channel money back if what was planned didn't occur. And the greatest example of that recently is something we've all been through with the pandemic. In our business, we have never seen in our time the level of volatility in the system, the amount of refunds, the demand for refunds, and using the card network that was specifically designed for that mechanism is a real reassurance that you can handle those booms, as we are seeing today, as we come out of the pandemic, but also the challenging times when money is flowing the other way down the street, as those contracts cannot be fulfilled for reasons such as the pandemic and lockdowns.
So, Spencer, why do you think more travel agencies are not shifting towards virtual cards and looking at manual reconciliation here, and how so much money is lost each year, spending huge amounts of time just doing these manual paperwork? Why aren't more agencies taking advantage of the digitization and moving towards virtual? That would make their lives easier and also help them save lots of money.
Well, first of all, in terms of volume in the system, the good news is I would say the majority are already aware and using VCCs for certain use cases. As you go up the scale in terms of the larger players, I won't name particular customers or brands, but the ones that are household names and would be recognized over the dinner table, those predominantly are aware of the opportunity and are capitalizing on it day by day to make their processes, their systems more economically viable, more efficient, and smoother for the consumer. The challenge comes as you come down the hierarchy and get to the mid-size, and sometimes also in a regional bias as well. Penetration of VCCs as a solution is not fully there. I fervently believe it is not a case of match to need. The use case is fairly universal. It's a question of education and probably priority as well. Let's face it, the travel industry as a whole has had quite a few pressing priorities on their plate for the last 2 years. But we make the case that sorting out payments not only allows you to manage the downflow in terms of the most efficient, client-friendly processes, but also, as we're seeing today, the once-in-a-career opportunity to return to travel. Triple-digit percentage increases year on year as we see the traveling public flooding back into airports and looking to relieve that pent-up demand. If you can manage your cash flow, if you can manage your processes so that you are not having to hire people to handle that workload, you're able to ride that wave much more efficiently. And it's education and priority. Those that have not put this on their priority list as something to make their businesses fit for the current scenario are going to be challenged. And so here at NEOM, we set ourselves a mission, not necessarily to compete against one supplier or another. We're competing against that lack of focus or that ignorance that may exist in certain pockets of the industry to the potential that these VCCs have to offer. It truly is a paradigm-changing opportunity for these companies to improve their processes and their cash flows.
I totally agree, and that ignorance is costly because I mean we have data that shows that almost 20% of the an agent's profit margin is eaten up by these avoidable payment-related costs like time spent in reconciling invoices and payment statements. So I believe, like you said, it eventually should become a priority because losing almost 20% of your margin is quite significant.
Yeah, I mean, if you look across the travel industry, it's innovating all the time, sometimes forced by macro changes. But the industry is moving from paper tickets to e-tickets. It's moving from long queues to check-in to self-check-in. Now, these may not be seismic, but I've had 30 years working in the travel industry, and I know the challenges inherent in making these happen on a global scale. I believe we're still scratching the surface with payments to support the travel industry. In the worst case scenario, an online travel agency is making a bank-to-bank transfer through the traditional rails of SWIFT, and that transfer is costing them a huge amount of money, relatively speaking, compared to the cost of alternatives, but also taking 3 days sometimes to end up where they want the money to flow. Now that's 3 days one way, and in that time you have to consistently chase and monitor and track and ensure that the person you intended the money to flow to got it. But the real challenge happens when it either doesn't get to where it wants to go, so you have to spend a lot of energy trying to find it, or you need to get it back. Then the exact reverse flow. And that simply, in today's world, more than anything else, because of the volatility and uncertainty in our industry, fingers crossed, touching wood, we don't get any variant, but our industry cannot tolerate to operate under those processes and those systems anymore. Or if you intend to be wed to those, then you're going to have a challenging recovery from the pandemic.
Spencer, you cover Europe as well, and looking at that region and the US, especially during the pandemic and how it was handled or how it impacted the different regions. Did you see any major differences in terms of how businesses operated and also with NEOM and how you approached it depending on regions? Were there any major differences there?
Well, we saw differences in terms of the impact of the pandemic and the subsequent recovery. So, and I talk specifically about air here. So in Europe, in mainland Europe, where we saw, as particularly last year, as governments attempted to open markets up to support the tourism industries, very critical industries for particular markets, Europe had the ability to switch to the car. And so we saw hotels in Southern Europe almost at full capacity during the peak, but aircraft half or fully empty. Sorry, wrong word, completely empty. Whereas in the United States, we saw the return to domestic travel, where it's used more like a bus due to the nature of the geography involved there. Hopping on an aircraft is not considered as exotic in the United States as it may on our island nation here in the UK. We returned to domestic travel much faster than we did here in Europe. So in that regard, there were differences in the way that the travel industry has seen a recovery to this process. The other issue that we saw was a differentiation in the way that customers were dealt with vis-a-vis refunds or vouchers. And that is still reverberating through the industry. The way that certain providers either refunded in full or provided a voucher for future travel, often without the infrastructure within their own processes or within the wider system to handle those vouchers and for consumers to be able to use those vouchers, that is still being worked through by the industry as we try to get that volume flown and those customers redeemed and back on the holidays that they had originally planned.
And I mean, as we're seeing, travel is starting to pick up again. And hopefully, like you said, touch wood, there's not a new variant. How do you see, what do you predict for the industry in regard to payment processes and innovation? Any trends you see emerging there as we move forward?
I first of all, fingers crossed, as you say, from your lips to God's ears, we don't get a new variant. I expect we will see uncertainty, however, come the winter season. So I know in my own personal life, if we were to discuss to take the family to Disney World with our grandparents or my children's grandparents, we would think twice about doing it in January, February, March of next year, simply because of the anticipation that there will be some sort of return to high infection levels. And do we really want to pay money now with the uncertainty of the winter season? So that already exists, that uncertainty in the system. What I think we are going to see is new pricing and fintech products coming out that reassure the traveling public that they can book with confidence with some extended period out. Or if those products and services don't come into the market, and we've seen them appear by certain travel providers already, but if they don't come wholesale into the market, I anticipate you're going to get a compression of people's booking period. So the willingness to book for summer 2023 now, or when you step off the flight after your summer holiday, which is often traditional. I know my wife talks about the next summer holiday when we're on the one we're on. So whether that will continue or we'll see much closer in planning and booking, I think that's still to be seen. What we need is financial processes and financial settlement products that enable the providers, the actual end suppliers, the intermediaries, the travel agencies, and the traveling public to be able to handle that change in dynamic most elegantly. And that's what NEOM is committed to building innovative products and services along with innovative partners who see the opportunity in this change in paradigm.
Awesome. And how do you see payment orchestration evolving? And also, what does it mean for the future of B2B e-commerce?
So essentially, payment orchestration, the biggest challenge is the complexity of paying internationally. And be that by licenses, local practices, jurisdictions, the successful players in this market, in the market of moving money around the world, are going to be the ones who do the heavy lifting on behalf of their customers. So the ones who understand that the world is not uniform, and the regulatory environment and the infrastructure and practices in place in every market is complex. It's ever evolving. It needs experts who understand it, who dedicate their time to ensuring that that complexity is not something for someone with an aspiring business idea or an established operation that they have to spend their time trying to work out. It needs to be worked out once by an expert who can build a network that is unrivaled in moving money quickly, efficiently, at affordable cost, and with a high degree of visibility and at speed. If they can build that network, understand that complexity in global money transfer, then the whole ecosystem of business can operate on top of that. Because that's one thing they don't need to worry about: being paid, paying their suppliers, understanding where their money is, and being able to move it rapidly around the world. That is a superpower, so to speak, for really building and boosting a business on the global stage. That's NEOM's raison d'etre. We love the challenge. It's a very big challenge, but we are very much in the throes of conquering that market by market, channel by channel, product by product. And our VCC offering is a case in point of how we can do that on a truly global scale.
Listen, we'll look forward to any developments, and yeah, look forward to keeping in touch as well. Thank you so much. This was very insightful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer.